everybody, welcome to the SUPboarder review of the Starboard Generation. Yes, a lot of you have been asking about this and we have been using this board for over a month now and we have given it a proper going over in lots of different conditions, and this video is going to help highlight what conditions, what riders, and really why this board works like it does. I'm going to tell you now, this board is going to come out well in this test, and you are going to hear me getting quite excited about it throughout this video. So I do apologise if I get my words or terminology wrong, because I'm a little bit excited about this board and really what this concept of boards means for paddleboarding. So basically, what is the Starboard Generation? Well, the Starboard Generation is what we would call a multi-sport or a multi-discipline paddleboard. Now, I suppose a lot of you are going to be going, well, I could paddle my 10.5 in a lot of different disciplines. I could go surfing, I could go touring, I could even enter a race on my 10.5. Yes, you could, but this is upper grade. This is the ultimate in multi-sport paddleboards. So this is like a combination. This is like somebody's put in 3 boards into a massive board blender. They've taken a Starboard All-Star, which is a high performance all-water race board designed to go really, really quickly. A Starboard touring board, which is designed to paddle longer distances, a little bit easier and effortless to use compared to the All-Star, but take a lot of weight. And also a more traditional classic all-round board like the good old Starboard Blend, which was in their range for years, which is just great at getting you on the water, friends and family, catching waves and doing a bit of everything. Putting all 3 of those in a big board blender, you come up with the 2020 Starboard Generation, and it has got the best bits out of all of those boards and no compromise put into this shape for this year. So that's what we're going to go over in a minute, looking at the shape and the design, pros and cons and all that sort of stuff, who should be buying this board. But first, let's talk about the specifications for this board. 12.6 by 28 wide, 6.3 inches thick, brings the volume at 249 litres. This is the carbon top version that we've been testing, but they also do the light tech version as well. The carbon top is a lightweight board at 12.2 kilos or 26.49 pounds. And that retails at £1,699, €1,899 or $2,199. The light tech version retails at £999, so it's a lot cheaper a price point, but the weight is still up there as well, and that only weighs 12.85 kilograms. The constructions of these 2 boards, we're looking at the carbon top first. Now this is the board, it's got T-stringers down the full deck, which does give this board a lot more strength. All the materials in this board are really designed to keep the weight down. The biax carbon, there's lightweight fiberglass, there's Australian pine under the standing area, which is there to stop the deck from sagging after many years of use. Gives you a lot more durability having pine under your main standing area. The light tech construction is still a pretty rigid board. It's still got unidirectional stringers down the board. It's still got the Australian pine under the standing area, but it's definitely not as stiff as the carbon top board, and it isn't going to give you as much high performance riding as the carbon top board. So for many of you out there, the light tech version will be the board you'll be looking at. Yes, you have the cost difference, which is quite a bit less, but actually the weight difference isn't a huge amount between the carbon top and the light tech. And if you're not really after that super stiff board to give you that better reactions or better ability to go out and bigger surf, then the light tech will be a board that will be absolutely fine. Okay, let's whiz through some of the features you find on this board, because a lot of this information you can find all around the internet, and I really want to get onto what this board paddles like on the water. Okay, starting up at the nose, we're not looking at the board shape yet, we're looking at the features and fittings that we have. Got FCS mount insert up there, you can put your GoPro, water bottle, selfie mount, anything, capture the action. And then down from there, you've got your bungees, okay? A small bungee area, which means obviously you can put your dry bags, cargo, flip-flops, drinks, etc. up there. This is a really nice feature now, moving back to the deck, because you have a recessed deck pad. If you're unaware of it, the reason that's such a good thing is the lower you are standing on or in the water, the more stable you are. The higher you are off the water, the more unstable you're going to feel. And that's come from the Starboard All-Star, the touring boards, they all have recessed decks. So that's a little bit where that's come from. This board, the carbon top is finished with the diamond grip EVA deck pad throughout the whole of the board, and it's got a really nice kick pad, which is a raised EVA pad right at the back of the board, which is great for your step back turns and getting into surfing, because you really are going to be using that kick pad. Middle of the board, you've got Starboard's trademark big chunky recessed carry handle. Carrying this board isn't really a problem at just over 12 kilos, and even I said the Light Tech doesn't actually weigh that much more than this, but this handle's great. You're happy to carry it long distances, and it's very easy to move around even on the windier days. This board's got inserts on the rails here, so you can fit your shoulder strap and paddle holder. To be honest, we didn't even put the shoulder strap onto this board because we were using it in a lot of fairly hefty conditions, and we didn't really want to have an extra strap dangling around the board. But it does fold back flat, nice against the board, so for general paddling, you can quite easily use the shoulder strap, and it's nice to have another feature, makes it even easier to carry to and from the water. So now let's talk about the shape of this board. Now I'm going to talk about this in some basic terms as well. I apologise if you all know this, just bear with me, because I know a lot of you out there are more of the beginner intermediate level that are going to be coming into the sport that could definitely be looking at this board too. So I'm going to explain it in a way so you can all understand it. When it comes to the length of the board, the longer paddleboard you have, the faster it will go across the water. That's why full-on touring race boards are 14 foot long, but they do also have a shorter race board class called a 12.6, and that is where this board will fit into a 12.6 class. So it is a full 12.6 in length, which gives you a lot of waterline length and a lot of speed and a lot of glide when you're paddling, which is basically moving forward for the least amount of paddle strokes. The rails on the board, the outline shape of the board, you'll notice it's quite a parallel outline. This actually makes the board quite quick as well on flat water and on the waves. If you have a more rounded outline, it will slow the board down. It might make it turn a bit more, but it won't be so fast. At the back of the board, you can see there's a slightly pulled in tail, and then it's finished off with a square tail. The pulled in part of the tail is what helps you in turns and when you're riding on waves, and the square tail is really good at releasing water quickly, and that's very much something you see on the Starboard touring boards and the Starboard All-Star. It just has less drag at the back, so it means you can paddle faster for less effort. So now let's talk about the bottom shape. We're going to talk about the nose shape, we're going to talk about the rocker line, which is the curve of the board, we're going to talk about the cross-section shape of the board, and we'll talk about the tail shape. So first off, the nose shape. Now underneath the board, this is where a lot of the magic of the board happens. This is where the water enters the board as you're paddling along or surfing or catching some little waves downwind or even touring. So this is really one of the most important parts on any board, is how the water enters the board. With most race boards like the All-Stars and the Starboard Sprints, when they've got a 12.6 length board or a 14 foot board, they usually have got most of that board in the water. Most of that board waterline length is touching the water, because that makes you paddle much quicker. But this board, it's got a much later entry to that. So the water line length isn't using the full 12.6 of the board. Now that has a number of good things when it comes to definitely paddling in choppier open waters or catching waves. It has a more of a domed round entry, so as the waves enter or the chop enters the front of the board, it doesn't want to catch and point you in a certain direction. It very much lets you point the board where you want it to. A board with more of a V or a bow or a keel, if you've come from a boat terminology, has more of a chance to want to point and stick to one direction and keep tracking in that one direction. If you have a more of a rounded front, more of a curved entry to the board, it's much more forgiving. So this is straight away you can see is a much more forgiving board than a board like this Starboard All-Star or the Starboard Sprint. Just there you can see, look how rounded that entry is. You can see the straight edge does not want to stop at any point. And even back here, you've still got a fair amount of rounding to it. Now this is where the boards, again, like the race boards, the All-Stars and the Sprints, they're much more pronounced here. And that really is what can catch people out, definitely if you're more of the beginner intermediate paddler, if you're paddling in choppier waters and riding and catching waves for the first time. Now obviously that does mean it's not going to be as fast as a full-on race board because it hasn't got that full waterline length, but that's a compromise that a lot of you out there, and me myself, I'm well willing to take for the benefits of it being able to use in more open water and surf environments. Just in front of your standing area, this is where the water is being forced and really starting to slow down. It starts to slow down at this point and you're starting to push the water back towards the fins. So straight away you'll notice that there is a sort of round V here, so the middle of the board is still higher than the sides. The sides are lower, and that puts the board a little bit higher out of the water, and that really helps you generate a lot of speed. If you're unfamiliar with the Starboard All-Star, which is their full-on race board, they have quite a big sort of V in the center of the board here, and that really helps the board pick up and paddle really quickly. If we move back to the standing area, because it's just a little bit easier to see, you'll notice either side of this V, which is still here, you have quite big concave. So you have a concave here and a concave here. It's what you call a double concave. Now, the simplest way to imagine that is when your water's traveling down your board, the water gets pushed into this area here. It causes a high pressure because the water's more compact in this area. And that actually is going to give you stability. So the board is going to be forcing you faster onto the water because of the V, but at the side, when you start to rock from side to side, the water compresses in this concave and it gives you a good amount of stability. So this is why the board sort of is so interesting underneath, because it's not just a flat bottom, it actually holds the water and gives you that stability where you need it. So it can be 28 wide, it doesn't got to be 32 or 31 wide, it can be a little bit narrower, but you can still get the heavier weight paddlers on this board. We'll speak about the ability and the weight range in a minute, but just bear in mind, all of this helps you paddle this board and helps you get on a narrower board than you generally think you'll be able to paddle. So moving back just in front of the fins, you'll see that it's still got the same characteristics, still got the raised middle with the double concave at the side, except it's sort of getting subtly flattened out. Now the problem with having this sort of shape at the back of the board is it is going to make the board struggle to surf really well. It won't surf as well as having a more flattened off board. Surfboards generally at the back need to have a slightly flatter profile than the extremeness of this midsection. So to give that board the extra ability to surf and handle waves better, they've subtled out the transition and flattened the board off a lot compared to the midsection. Still has that V and that slight double concave, but it's settled down quite a lot to give it that surf performance. So now looking at the rocker line, which is the curve of the board from the front to the back, it goes hand in hand with the bottom shape that we just spoke about. It's got a nose rocker up the front there, which helps the water go under the nose of the board and not catch. And then it's got a moderate flat section in the middle of the part of the board. Just so you're aware, the flatter the board is, the faster the board is. So that way, when you're riding and you're paddling your hardest on flat water and you're in your normal paddling stance, that's going to offer you a good flat profile to get you paddling as quick as possible. But in the back of the board, you need a small amount of tail kick for when you're surfing. So that's why there's a small tail kick at the back of the board, which bends down away from the back. It means you can lean on the tail and carve the board in the waves much easier. Looking at the fin setup of this board, this is very different compared to the touring or the race boards. Touring race boards usually always have single center fins because a single center fin is going to produce less drag than having lots of different fins. But when you're surfing, you will need the 2+1 setup because having the fins right on the rails will give you a lot more grip and bite when you go to bottom turn, top turn, and just riding surf in general. Some of you keen-eyed starboard followers will notice that this isn't the actual fin setup that comes with the board. It comes with a bio-resin center fin and recycled fishing net side fins. The Light Tech actually comes with all 3 net positive recycled fins. But having it as a 2+1 fin setup, which is where they mean having 2 side fins with a center fin that's bigger, that's what they mean by 2+1, does give you the option to really change the riding characteristics and feel of the board. You want to go surfing, definitely you're going to stick to your 2+1, or you could even put a smaller back fin in there if you wanted to. You want to go racing, touring, long distance cruising, take your side fins out and just ride it with your center fin, or maybe even get yourself a bigger, more wide-based raceboard fin to help with that straight line tracking even more. Okay, the tech talk's almost over. Let's just talk about the rail shapes now. Why have we got such big boxy rails on this board? And also looking at how the rails enter with the front nose of the board. Well, big boxy high-sided rails are something you will see very common, in fact, on all race boards, flat water race boards or open water race boards, and they're very much a staple part on touring boards as well. The reason for this is as you rock from side to side, if you're unstable, is the water has to come higher up the rail to get over on top of the board, and it gives more of what we call secondary stability, which gives you a lot more stability when you're paddling. So I hear some of you ask, why don't we have big, thick, boxy rails on all our paddleboards? They'll be way more stable. Well, you could do until you want to actually turn your paddleboard, until you want to use it in the planing sense, until you want to take it surfing. That is where you need that narrow rail, because you want the water to wrap around the rail to give you grip as you turn and carve, especially on a wave. And that's what they've done here with the Generation. They've thinned out the back of the board, so when you are surfing it, you are surfing and using the board in the thinner rail section. You still have the thicker, boxier rails up the front, so when you are paddling in your normal paddle stance and you're rocking from side to side, still gives you that stability. But when you move back, you catch waves, you've got the thinner, more tuned rail here, which is going to give you a lot more performance when you're surfing. The other combination up at the front here is you've got this slightly domed deck up the front, so if you do get any water that comes onto the front of the board, if you do nosedive, if you're paddling downwind or you're catching waves, the water does shrug off the side of the board. But the board isn't really designed to be ridden like that. If you're aware of the All-Star and the sprint boards, the race boards, those boards are designed to have the water to very much wrap over the nose of the board, and they will not nosedive. This board is designed to sit higher out of the water and definitely take most of the water underneath the nose. Okay, hope you're all sticking with me and it's all making sense. Of course, any questions, leave them in the comment section below. We'll happily get back and help explain some stuff if you're unsure. Now, some of you out there might already be well aware of what it's like to paddle on the water, considering what we just said about its shape, but let's go over a few of the main points. So looking at flat water, open water, and then looking at surf. So flat water, well, obviously this board isn't going to be as fast as the flatter base boards, the full longer waterline race boards. This board is going to be a quick board to paddle in generally because it's not too wide and it's got a nice average waterline length. It's going to be nice and stable from side to side because of the concave, the double concave, and the V or the raised center. It's a very easy board to paddle and track in a straight line. Definitely if you paddle it with the 3 fins, the 2+1 setup, you're going to be able to paddle even easier in a straight line than if you paddle with a single center fin. But bear in mind, if you want to paddle faster, take your side fins out and you'll have less drag. When it comes to learning and doing step back turns, which is where you want to walk towards the back of the board and pivot on the tail, this is a really good board for doing that because you've still got a good amount of volume in the tail here. It isn't too narrow like some of the race boards, and you're nice and low in the water, so it does pivot around very easily. And definitely with this one, having the raised kick pad at the back is great because you can ram your foot against it and you know exactly where your foot is. A real basic thing or something to remind you about is the width of the board. Because it's 28 wide, it's not too wide. If you were going to paddle a 30 wide or a 31 or 32, you've got to reach out further to put your paddle in the water. Therefore, you're not going to be as efficient, and that's why race boards are generally much narrower. If you could have a race board the same width as your shoulders, you know you're going to paddle in a really efficient manner. So by keeping it 28 wide, good amount of width, stability still, and with the bottom shape, and it's still very easy to paddle in a straight line and paddle with a good amount of power. Looking at open ocean and sea paddling, this is definitely where the Generation really comes into its own. Now this board has got so many of the features that we're all really happy to see. The nose shape is fantastic at punching into chop and catching waves down chop, paddling cross chop. It does it all. The reason it's so smooth is because of the roundness, just maybe 2 feet back, half a meter back from the nose. It hasn't got any big V or big deep keel sticking down. It's happy to ride over chop in any direction. So if you're paddling in cross chop or side chop, not quite into it, it's happy just to go where you want to point it. Unlike a lot of the more performance race boards, which really you have to sort of really be in charge and paddle, this board is quite happy just to generally paddle where you want to go. It's a very easy board to paddle in choppy conditions. Punching into waves, you will end up getting water over the deck a bit more, and it's definitely not going to be as quick as some of the more performance open water race boards. Going down with the waves, downwinding, and maybe we can even talk about a bit of surf with this. It is amazing how well this picks up bumps, and it's amazing how easy it picks up bumps. You might have seen one of the blogs we did with Harry, who's 95 kilos. He's a good intermediate paddler. He's really trying to improve his paddleboarding in all his sort of disciplines, and he really did like the Generation. 28 wide, it's not, you know, he's up there on the weight scale, isn't he? 28 wide, he's 95 kilos, but he found this board really easy and effortless to paddle. Great at picking up little bumps, so if you want to get into downwinding, catching little estuary river bumps. If we're talking about it a bit more in surf, really looking at properly surfing with this board is happy to ride waves knee high to bigger than we've tested. We had it out, I gave it to Bo, and it was probably a head and a half, a good 4 foot, 5 foot swell. Definitely more than I've seen this board ridden by anybody else. And he was quite comfortable in surfing this board. Yes, Bo is a very competent surfer, but you could tell by the way he was surfing it, by the bottom turns and by the amount of bounce the board didn't have, how much control it had. Now definitely don't look at those videos and go, well, I'm never going to go surfing in that much swell. We really just wanted to highlight what this board could do and really try and push it to the max. I think if you're surfing in waist high, getting into waves, it was going to be a lot of fun. And the biggest thing, it's going to get you on the waves so early, and you're going to be able to paddle further away from any surf groups, be on your own and catch endless empty waves all by yourself. So let's finish off with pros and cons, value for money, and who will best suit the Starboard Generation for 2020. Well, pros, well, I think pretty much you could take the whole first half of this video and just put it in as pros. I mean, the design, the shape, the construction of the carbon top, the construction of the light tech as well, for the price and the weight. It's just, they're really well thought out boards that basically the whole board is a pro. The whole board is a pro. But I will give Starboard some constructive cons or constructive criticism to make their boards better for next year. If you want to hear it, more boards in the range. I want to see more boards like this. You've opened up a can of worms with the Generation. I want to see more sizes, more widths, more lengths. Give me more, give us more. The people will need more, and definitely this type of board will benefit so many people, but we'll speak about that in a second. Other cons, again, it's something to be aware of and improved. It'd be nice if we had extra sort of bungee loops or the stainless inserts here at the back of the board, so then we could use it for a bit more touring. We could have tie downs at the back there. Looking at value for money, well, carbon top, I mean, if you got the money, it's a lovely board, it's a lovely weight. Okay, it's only a little bit lighter than the light tech, but the stiffness of the board is going to give you that bit more performance. And I actually don't think the carbon top is that much money. You are getting a lot of board for your money. I mean, we've ordered some smaller Starboard Pro boards, and they're more money than this and they're half the size. So value for money, I don't find the carbon top too expensive. Definitely the light tech is a very good value price point, under £1,000. Going to get you on the water, and you're going to be able to paddle exactly the same stuff, unless you're going to be going out in really big swell that you would be doing with the carbon top. So now let's look at who should buy this board. Ability, weight wise, and what you can use it for. I could give you a really long answer to this, and I probably will anyway, but I'll give you a short answer to start off with. Potentially every single paddleboarder in the world could potentially use and enjoy the Starboard Generation. It is that versatile. Flat water paddling, something easy, a little bit quicker, but not as fast as a race board. Starboard Generation. Want to get into downwinding, catching small bumps, maybe in an estuary, but still don't want to spend that much money or don't want to have a board that's that hard to use. Starboard Generation. Want to get into touring, light touring, want to paddle a little bit further, maybe not with a massive amount of weight. Starboard Generation. Want to get into surfing, catching small bumps, learning good techniques and catching waves early. Starboard Generation. I mean, going into races, not fussed about really being on top of the podium or spending lots of money, but want to go out there, have fun and enjoy it with my friends and family. Starboard Generation. The list can go on. It can do everything, and it does do it all pretty well. Yes, it's not going to be the fastest of race boards, so if you are going into racing, it's going to be more of a fun, get into it type of racing. Yes, it's not going to be the best at surf, but it is a fun get into surfing. It will do it all, and it will put a smile on a lot of people's faces. It has put a smile on all of our testers at SUPboarder, and it really does do it all, and for a lot of different people. Weight-wise, Starboard recommend 50 to 100 kilos. I'll go along with that. Definitely you could be more of a beginner paddler at the lighter weights. You could probably get on this as a first-time paddler, sub 70 kilos, especially if you had 1 or 2 lessons. Heavier people, 95 kilos. As I said, Harry went on this. He went SUP surfing. He's not really that experienced. He's maybe been SUP surfing maybe 8 times or something. Happy to get on this, 95 kilos. 100 kilos, you're going to be okay, but it is obviously a little bit narrower. So you are going to have to concentrate, but you could easily start off in flat water. So it is going to be a wide range of weights there. Definitely because of the way it's designed, it's easily going to take intermediate paddlers easily into more advanced paddling, and it's not that technical to use. So don't worry about thinking, oh, I'm only on a 32 wide board, I don't think I can drop down to 28. If you're paddling a 10.6 by 32 inflatable now, you will be able to paddle the Starboard Generation. So there you go. I hope you found that review interesting and informative. It is a standout board. I hope that's come across in the review. And what's more than that, it's a really exciting stage that we're at, because I think Starboard are just scratching the surface with this type of generation board. Multi-sport paddle boards like this are boards that you should all be taking note of and looking at. Even top racers, you should be all having a board like this in your quiver. They are so much fun, you are going to learn so much good technique, and you're going to get more time on the water. Thanks Starboard for bringing this to Generation, and we really look forward to seeing the developments of these types of boards into the future. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Give this video a like if you found it useful. It does make a difference to make sure that we know we're doing a good job. Until next time, we'll see you on SUPboarder, SUPboarder Pro, and on YouTube. Thanks a lot.